Croeso, it's Friday, it's 4 o'clock, and it's Dragonheart. We've pre-recorded this show because of the problems caused by the COVID break and also because of the Christmas period. However, I can still give you the week's headlines because I'm fully aware of what's been going on using my clairvoyant skills. The transfer of Leo Messi is now complete. When asked why he chose to sign for Wrexham ahead of Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City, he said the decisive factor was when he heard of plans to build a second Lidl in town on the site of the old police station. Also exciting times for Wrexham as the Prime Minister will be visiting us next week. Isn't it much more reassuring now that we know Marcus Rashford is in charge? And congratulations to Adam Barton for his surprising victory in the BBC Sports Personality of the Year trophy. I'm Mark Griffiths. I'll be joined by Chey Long, and after our special edition 2 weeks ago talking to Kerry Evans, we decided that we would double down and have a whole hour chatting just about the community work that the club does. We'll be hearing as well from Steve Lloyd about his excellent Dragon Chat initiative. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get cracking. It's time for Dragonheart.
I'm Kwame Thomas.
I'm Adi Yusuf here.
I'm Anthony Jeffrey.
And you're listening to the Dragonheart Radio.
So welcome to Dragonheart, and this is a special edition as well, because we want to look at the things that make Wrexham Football Club special, and also the things that shouldn't be special in a way for a football club. I'm Mark Griffiths, I'm joined by Chey Long, and I should have said that at the start of the programme. That was smooth, wasn't it? Yeah. The community-based work that the club does is prominent in our personality as a club. It's clearly something which attracted Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds and made us stand out from the crowd, and they've acknowledged that. And it's something which, if I can explain my cryptic comment at the start, I think is not something that should be an added extra and something unusual. It should be something I think every club does. But the truth of the matter is lots of clubs don't do that much, and often what they do is purely because they're compelled to have some element of football in the community programme. But I think it's fair to say, Jay, that with Wrexham, since we've become fan-owned, it genuinely is ingrained in the club, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, as we said, fan-owned, and I think it's very important that every football club tries to play its bit, because for towns like, say, ourselves and other small towns, the football club is the heart of the community, and we need to be making sure we support the most vulnerable in our community as well. So, the likes of people from different orientations, from people from different religions, different gender, or the LGBTQ plus communities, and the homeless communities, and children who are on children and families on a low income. I think that's really important for a football club in this day and age, really.
And the football club opens doors, not only in terms of getting things done, but also it opens doors for people who want to help and support. I mean, the great frustration for people who are well-meaning but aren't sure how they can help out a situation is often not knowing who to turn to for advice or who to turn to join to make a difference. But when you have a football club which is doing good things in the community, we become that contact. You think about a lot of the good community stuff that's been done while the trust has been running the club. A lot of it is just an individual person picking something else and saying, I want to run with this. And by using the club's name to do that, they get results and get further than just operating as an individual.
Yeah, definitely. So I think with the club, it's an opportunity to make a difference, really. There's been a lot of schemes and what have you. And you mentioned to me earlier, and I didn't really know about this, was Bert Foster, who was a player who died in the turf. He's buried in a cemetery in Moorabbin. And basically, his gravestone was old and it needed repairing and redoing. And the club and the trust and the community stepped in and, restored the grave, which I think is a fantastic story. I've never heard of that. It was brilliant.
And it comes from just one person finding that out and deciding that now with the links to the club, there's an opportunity to put that story out there, to get a group of people together to do something to make a difference. And that's the power of a football club that takes community work seriously, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they can reach out and do things like that and follow one person's idea, if you like.
Definitely, and I think we can do this for the LGBT community. We could do this for so many different communities. I think it's brilliant that our club is really passionate about this sort of thing. But do you think, it might be a controversial question here, do you think being in the National League, do you think they do enough for this sort of thing compared to, say, the EFL and the Premier League, who are really keen on it?
I could be wrong on this, and if I am, I will apologise unreservedly. I'm struggling to think of many things that the National League do on this level. A part of me understands that. I'm generally very critical of the National League. I think in a lot of ways its organisation is not good. It's had a bit of a trauma in the last couple of weeks with, big figures resigning, essentially because the Maidstone chairman called them out on something by speaking common sense and drawing attention to mistakes they've been making. So I think in general, I'm not a fan of the National League. But, okay, I might have missed things they've done. And if I haven't, I actually understand it a way, because National League is a weird setup. Remember, National League is not just our division, it's the north and south beneath us as well. So you're ranging from clubs like us, Notts County, who are in big cities or big towns, attracting 5,000, then you've got a national, if not international profile, down to, and I'm not saying this in a patronising way, I'm just saying genuinely, down to very small teams at the bottom end of the conference, north and south, who are getting a couple of hundred fans a game and probably don't have the resources to do anything beyond put the football team out. So
yeah, exactly.
I think maybe it's difficult for them in other respects. I think the lack of transparency and governance in the National League is an issue.
Yeah.
But in terms of organising these sorts of initiatives, even though they're important, yeah, I think maybe the National League's not in a position to, perhaps.
Yeah, but as well, they could also follow the FL's lead and the Premier League's lead. It only takes a few emails, doesn't it, to jump on board with stuff like.
I don't think they've got all that on. I don't
that. And it doesn't take much. But another thing I was thinking of talking about is a lot of people think that diversity and inclusivity is a political issue, and that think that the football and politics shouldn't be together, if you get what I mean. What would you say to people who think that way, and what do you think the club can do?
Yeah, I think that, well, maybe split this up. Should sport and politics be kept apart? That's utterly impossible, and it's naive, I think, to try and suggest that it could be possible. And I think when people say that, it's almost because they want to keep the status quo and not have to make difficult decisions. I mean, sport is part of community. That's the whole point of the show, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Everything that happens in the world affects sport. Why are certain stories in football interesting to us? Because we know the people behind it, because we know the background of the club. So you have, when Leeds play Chesterfield, you've got concepts about what those two entities mean, linked into their community, linked into the real world, linked into politics, linked into everything. So I think it's daft, isn't it? And let's be honest, politics often very directly influences sport, going back to, Hitler and Jesse Owens in the 36 Olympics, 80 and 84, you've got America and then Russia and boycotting Olympics. I mean, you can't separate the two.
The World Cup in South Africa, the Rugby World Cup.
That was
a huge political statement.
I mean, appropriately at the time, Maradona, considering sadly he's only just died, I mean, his game against England, I mean, the spice around that game is not just that they're two teams who are contenders to win the World Cup, it's the fact that they were at war a year earlier and wanted to get at each other.
Well,
I mean,
Argentina wanted the Falklands Island flag on their shorts.
That's right, yeah.
Which is, FIFA had to block that because that would have been...
Yeah.
That would have been quite quite a statement, really, wouldn't it?
I mean, I accept I'm a hypocrite in some respects, because when I say sport and politics do mix, obviously there's some sorts of politics I would not like to see mixing or given any attention. But then I think that's where you cross that line. What's politics and what's morality? And I think that's coming on to the second part of what you're saying. I think there is a right to draw attention to equality issues, because it isn't politics, it's just decency and what's right. So I mean, if you could take this analogy, and as a teacher myself, I'll stand by it. A teacher should not teach politics. So regardless of my opinions, I shouldn't stand in front of a class and say, this politician is right, this politician is wrong, you should vote for this party. I should not be doing that, no matter what I might think. However, issues of prejudice are not political, they're moral. Exactly. So I shouldn't turn around and say, don't vote for that party. But I absolutely will say racism is wrong, homophobia is wrong, because those are not political issues. And anyone who wants to turn them into a political issue, I have to douse their motives.
Yeah, and I think the people who question schemes like the rainbow laces and things like that, they want to turn it into a political issue by saying it's a political issue, but it's not a political issue at all.
It's an acceptance thing, isn't it? It's accepting people rather than being prejudiced against them. And
I think it's about, instead of, like you said in the past, some clubs just like to tick the odd box, like, we've wore rainbow laces for a week or etc., rather than making actual lasting change in the community themselves. So I think, controversially, I think taking the knee, teams taking the knee for so long, like they have, was a real lasting statement that really got everyone talking about it. And as I said, we both work in a school. I've seen a PE class go on, and before they kicked off, all the kids took the knee.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So it's ingraining into kids who may not have come from families, or who, maybe they've got a racist grandparent or parent or something. Seeing their idols take the knee might stop them from thinking the way their family members have.
Yeah, and you hit on a key point there. I think that, again, people may disagree with me on this, it disappoints me when you see initiatives like, say, the Rainbow Laces, and it happens for a week, and then doesn't happen afterwards till next year. That's not a criticism of the campaign, certainly not a criticism of its aims, but I feel like doing something for a week and then putting it back in its box isn't changing the way you behave. Well, I don't want to say paying lip service. I think clubs have the right intentions, but it's why I'm glad that the taking the knee has continued, and it's not just one of those, well, once a year we wear kick racism out of football t-shirts, which, again, I applaud the people behind it and I applaud the idea, but it's not about making a message for one weekend. It's about living that life and making that clear in everything you do as a person and as a football club, as an institution as well, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And I think inclusivity and diversity, it doesn't just stop at obvious things like disability, racism, religion, sexuality. I think, football clubs should play a part in making football games cheaper for low income families, so they can go to watch a football game and not suffer the burden of that's going to skimp me out. I might not be able to have tea that night. You know what I mean? I think that's another thing we need to think about. And homelessness as well, which is a huge problem in Wrexham at the moment, and a lot of communities around the UK.
Yeah, exactly. My son is a Wrexham fan, but also a big Liverpool fan. And full disclosure, when I was a kid, I used the privilege we have when we live in a small town of supporting your local team and a Premier League team. Liverpool were my team. And basically, I'm so old that they were like, that was the great 1970s, 80s team. And I've been able to get tickets for us to see a lot of the recent European games at Liverpool, because it's just great to watch such a big match, The thing that strikes me a lot when you go there is how high profile their support for the food banks are. There's the last couple of years, there's always been vans there from the food banks, making collections at every game. I know that Everton are held up by a lot of people as the best community club in terms of the work they do, and they are massively supportive, and it's clearly a joint Liverpool-Everton initiative. And I just that makes me think, yeah, exactly, because that's the whole purpose, isn't it? Really, a football club. A lot of football clubs were founded not to make money or for glory, but for other reasons. There's things like Celtic were founded to fund education for underprivileged children of Irish immigrants. You know, things like that.
I just learned that myself. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's which led to and links with the homelessness. Oh man, I'm the Segway king again. A player you probably don't remember, Pierre van Hooijdonk, who played for Celtic and then moved to Forest, who he was a good striker, Dutch striker. He started really well for them at Celtic, and then he wanted a contract extension with better wages. He was offered, the contract was like $350 a year, but this is the mid-90s, so you know I'd take $350 a year, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And in those days, that's good wages for a footballer. And the fans were behind him. The fans wanted him to stay and thought he deserved more pay, but he went public saying, "I've turned down this contract of $7,000 a week because that's not a homeless person would turn that down, never mind an international striker," which is a despicable thing to say.
Yeah.
And just like that, the fans turned against him. And there was, I think, a great sense, and I'm not trying to jump into the Rangers-Celtic debate here at all. I think that's pathetic, that. But the Celtic fans were aware of their heritage and that history of being set up as a sort of charitable thing. And therefore, their attitude was, we don't want someone uncharitable like that representing us and going against that ethos, you know, whether it really is played out or not. People like to tell themselves that that's part of their character. And yeah, he left a year later to Forest, did very well actually, but I like that idea of we have certain values in a club, in a community, and you know, we will not accept breaches of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, leading to something else now, I think it's so important when fans are allowed back into the ground that if you hear any racist or homophobic or sexist remarks, that you do something about it and you speak out against it, and that doesn't mean you. I think verbally, if you're not, I think verbally saying to someone, you know, you can't say that in this ground. Really, if you've got the power and you've got the guts to say that to someone, all power to you. But you know, reporting to a steward, writing an email to the club saying how annoyed you were at that you've heard these things. And I've got stories when I've been to the racecourse, and I'll tell a story now, and it really did upset me at the time. I was only about 30, I think I was about 15, 16. And there was a guy, we had Jocelyn Miabi in goal at the time, and he made a mistake, and someone said, "Why the F is this monkey playing?" And it really upset me, and I really didn't think that Wrexham fans could be capable of something like that, but it's in every football club, and I think it's really important you go tell a steward or you go right to the club.
Well, sadly, there have been more and more reports of that coming from behind the goal at the racecourse in the last couple of years, and I know of people who have reported to the stewards about it, and the club, I know, because I can see this from inside as well, carried out proper inquiries. Fans had been banned from the racecourse for racial comments, and it's important, I think, that as a community, we set that tone, that we don't tolerate that, because, well, again, show me age. 1981, for some reason the year sticks in my head. Man City are playing at Anfield, and someone on the Kop throws a bottle at the City goalkeeper, Joe Corrigan, and hits him on the head. And Corrigan goes down. Now, I think it's fair to say that in a lot of football crowds, that will be tolerated or enjoyed. You know, we look what we did to their keeper. And certainly in the 80s and the 70s, when hooliganism was rife, I mean, that sort of stuff happened. But it was a memorable moment, which I don't recall really seeing in any other context in football. Immediately, all the people in the cop around him grabbed the bloke and were pointing at him to draw the police to him because they wanted him arrested. Now, I just like that idea of I don't want to say self-policing, but more that we just send out a message that, well, we don't want this sort of thing happening within our community, and little gestures by individuals make the difference then, because like you say, if things are reported to stewards and that's a consistent thing, because we all don't accept this, then that gets squashed because the message is sent out, well, someone's been banned there, well, we're not tolerating this. That's what happens when you behave like that,
So for you, what's a suitable punishment for someone who's caught saying these things? Is it important that we punish these people, or would that make their feelings and their opinions stronger, or is it important that we educate these people, or maybe a bit of both?
I think a bit of both. I think action has to be seen. I think to be taken to send that message out that certain behaviours aren't acceptable. But it's nice to think that you might be able to get through to somebody by saying, we're going to try and re-educate you. Maybe we're banning you now. If we feel satisfied that you've gone through a course of rehabilitation, if you like, so you can behave in a more acceptable way, then we'll accept you back, if you will.
Exactly, and it's not only racism as well. It's homophobia. When we've had female officials, we've had sexist remarks being shouted at, and some people find it amusing and funny, but it really isn't. It's stepping us back 10, 20, 30 years to the days where it was acceptable to say things like that. And I think it's really important that we educate people. And I think slowly, these things aren't going to happen overnight. Slowly, it's going to stamp out of the game.
Yeah, exactly. I was pleased when, okay, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I just missed this, but I think I'm right in saying this. When Adrian Cislovic scored the ghost goal at Kidderminster when the ball went through the net, there was a lot of concern among the fans that it took so long to sort her out. The referee was a woman, and I don't recall particularly, I don't think, there being any sort of sexist element to the frustration, if I remember correctly. I hope I'm right in saying that. Somebody's going to now listen to this and say, "Oh, I was in the away end and it was terrible." So I hope I'm right in saying that. But I think it was frustration that wanted to get it sorted, and I would say she sorted it extremely well in that she just didn't rush it. She gave a goal kick. She could see that by the reaction of the Wrexham players, they couldn't believe it. And obviously, when that happens, okay, they're not faking it here. Something's wrong. And she went round her officials to check what they'd seen. And that was sensible. It led to quite a long delay. To me, if somebody was culpable in not sorting it straight away, it was a fourth official, because I could see clearly from where I was on the halfway line that it went in. I was right behind it, and I could see it went inside the post and straight through. There was no question. The fourth official was right in front of me. Kidderminster's not a big ground, so he's like 8 rows in front of me. He had pretty much the same view as me. I suspect he could have seen that, and yet didn't draw his attention and say, right, come over because I've definitely seen this. But anyway, by hook or by crook, she ultimately consulted everybody and came to the right decision and overruled herself and gave the goal. But I don't recall there being any sexist criticism, and that was quite pleasing to see. There was frustration. Come on, we've got to have a goal here. It was just normal frustration. I hope I'm right.
Yeah, well, you'd like to think so. But it's also as well, I want to ask you a question with football, gay footballers. Now, there has to be one, doesn't there? There has to be one in the Premier League. And what do you think, say, in the future, if a gay footballer comes out, what do you think that could do for football in general?
Fantastic, wouldn't it be? I mean, it's a shame, isn't it, that there seems to be this macho attitude about football that gay can be used as an insult. That I'm sorry, Graham Lasso was regularly baited by the fans because he was supposedly gay, despite the fact that he wasn't. It doesn't matter if he was or he wasn't really. and really the things that they were trying to suggest were that he looked quite boyish, that, supposedly his teammates used to mock him because he read The Guardian and that makes him gay. Sort of, well, it's just silly, ridiculous nonsense and a remarkably immature view of how humans are. So it would be great to see people feeling comfortable to do that. But I think there's got to be a big climate change within football to allow it, perhaps. Or has there? I bet you most footballers wouldn't give a damn. No,
most footballers, and I think 90% of fans wouldn't give a damn. Look at Thomas Hitzelsberger, for example. Ex-Aston Villa player. My dad's a Villa fan, family favourite. He came out as gay after playing football, and I think it's such a crying shame that we're in 2020 and there's not a gay footballer, really. And I'm not saying there has to be, but there is going to be a gay footballer somewhere. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and there was a fella from a group called Villa and Proud. My family all support Villa, so I do keep an eye on what's going on at Villa. And he was saying to me that he struggles. He can't go to a game with his with his boyfriend, hand in hand, because he has done in the past, and he's got abuse. And I don't really understand, if you were in a work environment, for example, and you give someone abuse for being gay or being racist, you'd get the sack, rightly so, or you'd at least get a suitable punishment for what you've done. Why do people think it's okay to go into a turnstile and suddenly can think they can say and do whatever they like?
In a broader sense, isn't it, that almost mentality of I've paid my money, I can say what I want. Which is used in general just to shout general abuse at players, which, no, that's not acceptable. You can't just shout abuse at people. It's not, you can't say, I forked out 20 quid, so I'm going to call him all the names under the sun. Never mind if it's homophobic or racist, just any abuse. But it's a shame that, isn't it? And I find it interesting to juxtapose that with women's football, where there are openly gay players, but then women's football hasn't got that sort of toxic masculinity thing attached to it in terms of the supporters. Because people who are going to watch women's football are there because they want to watch women's football. It hasn't got that sort of territorial, this is my town, this is a chance to fight against other towns, mentality.
You can still, I've got to be careful what I say, you can still have that in a football club and be inclusive. You look at St. Pauli, for example. I know they're slightly divisive, they're a very political football team, but they fight for the rights of everyone, but still have a sort of hooligan vibe to them as well, if you know what I mean. I gotta be careful what I say there, because I'm not encouraging hooliganism or that culture, but it's a part of the culture that's never going to go away, isn't it? And I think we just have inclusivity, so you can still have that culture, you can still have a bit banter of each fan group, but it doesn't have to be racist, doesn't have to be homophobic.
Yeah, exactly. It's St. Pauli's an interesting one, isn't it? Well, I was going to say they're the second team in Hamburg. I rather suspect they would be very unhappy about being described as that, but certainly SV Hamburg are the massive traditional club, the dinosaur they used to call them, didn't they? Because they're the old traditional team who until a couple of years ago had never been relegated. Whereas St. Pauli are from the Reaper Barn area, so the red light districts. They are much more edgy. They have this, I'm going to say, like sort of, I don't know, hipster punk image almost, if you like, even down to wearing brown shirts rather than the sort of colours you'd normally associate with football shirts. Their emblem being the pirate, the skull and crossbones and things like that. And they're an interesting one, aren't they? Because a lot of that sort of stuff on the continent stems from ultra culture, and ultra culture is a very complicated thing, which can have great positives, but massively can have great negatives as well. And each country and each club has their own interpretation of that. And sometimes it can even be a competitive thing of showing that you're doing more for your community than some other ultra group do. If Rayo Vallecano, of course, are the other obvious team that are mentioned as a sort of left-leaning, and both those clubs I would say are to a great extent politically left-leaning. Rayo massively. Rio feels more organic sometimes. I've been to their grounds. They're very much a neighbourhood club. That's a real sort of hard-working region of Madrid. But on the other hand, the Bucaneros, their ultras, definitely play a big part in that, and they're not always coming from the right direction. Often they are.
It's the same with St. Pauli in some ways as well, where like, my biggest criticism is it all seems a bit exit through the gift shop. You speak to Hamburg fans and they say things like, well, yeah, they want to be anti-capitalist and all this, but whose shops can you see in and around Hamburg? You don't see Hamburg's shop.
Yeah.
They talk about the football, but they want to sell. St. Pauli want to sell things, so I'm sure they sell like the third most merchandise in German football or something like that, behind Dortmund and Bayern, which is quite huge. There's some big clubs in Germany, so I think there's getting a fine balance with a club like Wrexham is not going the full hog of, we're like St. Pauli, for example, and not addressing it. Oh, we want to get a perfect example of we do everything for the community, but we're mainly about the football.
Yeah.
But everything we do for the community is not like plastered out there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. It's an organic thing, which is part of what we do. St. Pauli are a brand. And that brings problems for a club that is left-leaning and anti-capitalist, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
We don't particularly want Wrexham to be left-leaning because we want people from all
absolutely.
sorts of political denominations to support Wrexham. It's about, and I think, the most important thing about football is no matter what race, what political beliefs, what sexual orientation is, once that goal hits the net, we all celebrate together.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect sentiment, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting if we look at those two examples, just briefly again, St. Pauli and Rayo Vallecano, they are left-leaning. That is definitely a result of their community, because the part of Hamburg and the part of Madrid they're from, they really are echoing that. I've never been to Hamburg. I'd like to. If anyone's paid me to go to Hamburg after lockdown, brilliant. I've been to Madrid a few times. Like I say, I've been to Vallecas, which is the area that Vallecano's in. And I've been to the gift shop, and I promise you, they are not a well-organised brand. I promise you, their gift shop is small Wrexham, certainly, for a club that's got this international profile. But let's throw out there a question, as you were saying about politics mixing with sport. That last season, they were going to sign a player on loan, a Ukrainian player, Zoizula, striker. And their fans uncovered a lot of what appears to be extremely right-wing posts by him on social media, where he was supporting far-right groups in Russia, in Ukraine. And they basically refused to allow him to play. There were protests. They said that they wouldn't accept him on the pitch, and ultimately Rayo accepted that and cancelled the loan deal, which left Zoizula in a very difficult position, because you're not allowed, under the current registration rules, you can't play for more than 2 teams in a season. He was from Betis, that was his parent club. They didn't want to use him. He's definitely not going to play. Rayo had registered him and then sent him back, so he played for his 2 teams, so he didn't play again all season. Now, it's an interesting one, that, because on the one hand, he was posting some very unpleasant stuff, and I like the idea that fans can say these values are incompatible with our beliefs. I like that. On the other hand, that bloke's just had his, I don't want to say his livelihood taken away from him, because he still get paid by Betis, but he's been bullied out of a football club. It's an interesting fine line. I suppose all these different issues get these little microcosms that make us think about how they work. It's a difficult one.
Politics in football is a very difficult one. I think it's something you should tread carefully with. You look for Rangers and Celtic. It's the obvious one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where the Irish meet the British, and you've got Rangers always typically side with conservative values, don't they? And support Israel, and Celtic, usually support Palestine and
that depresses me. That though.
Yeah. Do you think they're just doing it to pick the opposite of what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just feel like, I don't know, and maybe I'm being unfair, but how strongly are they really aligning with those sorts of issues? I wonder. It feels almost like we want to fight and we'll pick whichever side. I like the idea of community-based work rather than, like, say, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite now, politically based decisions that. I'm not saying you can't put politics into sport, but I think on that occasion it's using politics and prejudice as a hook to hang your hat on and say, I'll fight against the other side.
And this is what we said before. Diversity is not a political issue. It's an issue for society, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an issue for the football club. As I've said in the past, we should all go to football. Everyone should be able to go to the football and not worry about other people say about them. Exactly.
To me, the antithesis of that Rangers Celtic, just sort of because you're like that, I'll be like this attitude. In terms of positive impact, I can't help thinking of Mo Salah and Sadio Mane being Muslim and playing for Liverpool, and the Liverpool fans then, in picking a side, to be fair, but picking the side of their player, singing that song a couple of years ago about was it Mo Salah's a Muslim, I want to be a Muslim too, sort of thing. And it was a very nice sort of inclusive song to send out that message, and it could only be a positive thing, that, I think, to reject. I mean, the Liverpool's always been like that. I lived in Liverpool for quite a few years. Liverpool's always been a place that has rejected sort of prejudicial thinking more than other parts of England, I would say. But it was nice to see that. I was going to think, going back to Wrexham as well, in terms of the work that's done at Wrexham. And you were saying about things have to be organic. And I was saying about like the opportunities an individual is given. Well, I had to chat to Steve Lloyd this week, talking about the Dragon Chat initiative, which is a weekly Zoom meeting at the moment, every Thursday night at 7, where men 18 and over can talk about any concerns they have and mental health issues. And so, I'll tell you what, why am I going on about it when you can listen to the man himself? So here's Steve Lloyd talking about Dragon Chat.
The other side, you're listening to the Dragonheart Radio.
Oh, well, Steve, thanks first for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing as well, because, the talk everyone through first, the Dragon Chat phone line, because that's a superb work.
Thanks for having me on, Mark, anyway. Dragon Chat was something that we thought about after we'd done our mental health awareness days that we've done for World Suicide Awareness Day and for World Mental Health Day. The male suicide rate for between the ages of 19 and 48, the highest number of deaths for that is through suicide. So it's really an area which needs to be addressed and men need support, because I think notoriously and stereotypically men will find it that bit harder to talk and to open up, and this is where the Dragon Chat comes in. It's a peer support group, so everybody who comes along, we're all the same. The way I liken it is I'm almost like the player secretary of a Sunday league team. So I'm the one who does all the setting up of the meeting and the admin work. And then when I go there, I'm just exactly the same as everybody else on the pitch. I'm a player, and who gets involved and takes part in just discussing, bits and pieces which have been going on and things. It's quite a simple format, but I think it's been really effective so far, and I think it's helped people who've come along on the calls.
And that's open for anybody who wants to take part, just to do so on the Thursday.
Yeah, the link will be on the club website. Anybody, we're keeping the criteria at the moment to over 18s and males only. I have got other things in the pipeline with, I would hope to set up a women's group at some point. But I think the focus at this present moment is males, especially with the suicide rate of men being as high as what it is. And that was our real priority, to get that off and running. And anyone can join, just pop on the link. You'll be more than welcome in there. I think it can be difficult because at the moment it's on a Zoom call. In an ideal world, we'd be meeting at the Centenary Club. And, the hope is through these meetings that supporters will make friendships from it and support each other to go to games. That's, that would be the ultimate aim of Dragon Chat as well.
And I know I'm stating the obvious, but I mean, there should be no barrier to taking part in terms of, sometimes people think I'm concerned by something, but it won't be important enough to take part in this. It's if you feel you want to take part, it's appropriate to do so, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because I think with it being sort of, it's pitched as mental health support, which it is, but I like to keep it quite informal as well. And I think so that it is supportive, so that, there's nobody there that's going to sort of preach to people, and, you bring to the table what you bring to the table. You could have had a really bad day where, you've experienced some bad driving, and that could really wind you up, and it's good to get that off your chest. Mm. But equally, that's as valid as someone who perhaps, struggles to leave the house, or who can't go out, and the whole peer thing, I think, helps that, people who are really, really struggling who attend can see that other people have had struggles, but they're still, they're doing well or better now than what they perhaps were previously.
Yeah, that being able to open up and talk, and hearing other people being able to do that, and seeing people at different stages is an important perspective, I think, for people. As you said, suicide is such a terrible issue amongst young males. To be able to see people working through something gives you maybe a process that you can follow.
Absolutely. And, it's, when you look at the football club, the demographic of supporter is, we do have a lot of male supporters between those ages. And I think it's a really good thing to give them that opportunity if they do need it. We're always there, and, people can come and go. There's no, just because you come once, you don't have to keep on coming every time if if you're feeling a little bit better. But it's kind of always there for you when you need it.
Because thankfully, there are many areas where football as a game, I think, lags behind. But I think there's been, in some ways, a more consistent role played by football in the field of mental health, simply in looking to take away that stigma of the phrase mental health, if you will. Because rather, more consistently, maybe in some other issues football's trying to tackle.
Absolutely, Mark. I think it's a really interesting thing, because I think mental health, when people talk about mental health, they start thinking of mental illness.
Yeah.
But if we look at mental health, it's the same as physical health. Just like, so, if you've got a broken leg, for instance, you've got a plaster cast on it, and people can see that you've got a plaster cast, and they can tell that you've got a broken leg. However, I guess if you were to X-ray, 100 broken legs, every single one of them would be slightly different, where the break is and everything else. And it's a little bit the same, if you like, with mental health and mental illness. It's relevant to the person who's struggling with that, and there's many things that can create an issue, and often with the fine line between going from mental health to mental illness, we've all got a certain amount of shall we say, stuff that you can cope with and stuff that you can manage, which kind of keeps dripping in. But eventually, if you want to make the analogy of the bucket will overflow, and that'll tip to perhaps a depression or an anxiety, and that's where I hope Dragon Chat comes in, because it just allows that space for people to empty their bucket, so to speak, a little bit, and keep them going for until the next week.
I think that emphasises, I think, what we were saying earlier, of you don't have to feel embarrassed to join because you think what you're experiencing is trivial. because
No.
it's the cumulative effect that's a problem, and by intervening at this sort of stage, it's a precaution maybe against people being overwhelmed, so it doesn't develop into something even more difficult.
Absolutely, and you know, as regarding the service, I mean, it's a confidential service, and we say that, you know, what happens in the group sort of stays in the group. You know, we've got really good backup through the call helpline, who we've built links with from the football club, who support us. And if anybody's not aware of call helpline, it's the community advice and listening line, which is based in Wrexham, and that provides 24-hour support for people in mental health crisis or require mental health support. And there's a crisis line there which people can ring up, you know, 24 hours a day. So, you know, we've got really kind of good links and backup from them. If, you know, people are really struggling, you know, we've got somewhere where we can signpost them for the immediacy. You know, unless we need to act a bit more, which we would do if required to do so.
That mechanism you just described makes me very happy, because I just feel that, and naturally, most football clubs have no stake in doing this sort of thing at all. Their purpose is to win matches and make profit. And, you know, the community element often is an obligation tacked on. That's not true of all clubs, obviously, but it is true, I would say, in general. And yet, I love the fact that because the club is fan-owned, because there is that desire to do that for the community, that contact the club has made as well, because the club has heft in the town, all helps things to pull together. Something I was saying in the interview I've done with Kerry Evans, that having that club badge opens doors, and the bigger your club becomes, the more doors will open. It's great to see the club prioritising that,
Absolutely.
and working to facilitate what you're doing as well.
Yeah, I think it's important. Yeah, something like Dragon Chat, it doesn't kind of come up, or they don't kind of miraculously happen. It's certainly not with myself. I don't do things on a whim. There was a lot of research put in and a lot of preparation work to do this. Mike, the co-founder who does it with us, a gentleman called Dan Rowe, who's a brilliant mental health advocate, and does a lot of work for men's mental health. Up in his area, he set up one of Andy's Man Clubs. Whether anybody's heard of Andy's Man Club, but it's a support base similar to how we're running in Wrexham. And Dan set up the Man Club, Andy's Man Club in Manchester. He's also set up another one up in Rochdale, and he's done, you know, been down to Houses of Commons to present a paper as regarding with recommendations for supporting men. So, you know, we're incredibly lucky to have Dan on our side. And our first meeting with Dan was in January this year. And from there, we've slowly kind of worked through a process and got our support back up in place, so that, you know, everything's kind of covered. So we're not, you know, leaving ourselves or the club exposed in any way, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And we've got a really good, and more importantly, the people who come on the call, you know, it's not like we're there as not knowing what we're doing. And yeah, it's, you know, we've got that sort of backup and support that we need, and knowledge, obviously, from my profession, on where we can signpost people to if they are in crisis or they do really need urgent and instant help.
And I was going to come to that as well. And the best way to explain this is to give a potted biography of you from my perspective. I first came across you playing in goal for the Wrexham supporters team, and you were a fine keeper as well. You commanded your box well, and not that as a goalkeeper myself, you know, I just automatically found a kindred spirit. Could immediately see what an affable and articulate chap you were. And then I also apart from bumping into you in games and chatting about football, started to come across you in a professional capacity, because it should be emphasised, although you are a great Wrexham fan, your work is in the area of mental health. And in my job as a teacher, and especially when I was, you know, doing high-up pastoral work with year groups, I would have contact with you sometimes, and therefore can personally vouch for for your credentials and your professionalism. And so, I just want to sort of emphasise that to everybody, that sometimes very mistakenly people think that fan-led initiatives are people who haven't got qualifications, haven't got the credentials, jumping along and doing something. But this is very much a really impressive, how can I say, service to offer people. To be frank,
my hope, because I'll be honest, reflecting, and that's part of what I, as the profession as a nurse, and a lot of reflection, and it's been quite a difficult sort of challenge for myself personally as regarding going into Dragon Chat and kind of leading it, because the whole thing with it being peer-led is very much that everybody, there's no expert, or the expert is yourself, and and that sometimes it can, as a professional, as a mental health professional, you can be perceived as that knowledge and that expert. And I've always, whether I'm working, in my job professionally or not, I always try to make sure that whoever I'm seeing understands that they're the experts. They know themselves better than anybody will ever know them. And I think that's really important. And that's what I found quite interesting. It was quite a difficult transition not to be the expert and not to jump in when someone was perhaps talking about somewhere where they've had a struggle. The natural instinct would be to kind of jump in and offer a different perspective or something like that. But this is very much about them and allowing just people a safe space to get things off their chest.
Well, I must say it's not only admirable what you're doing, but it's also remarkable, because just to put this into context, the health service is under incredible strain anyway, and even before COVID came along, to be able to get mental health support could often be a long and frustrating process, simply because of the lack of resources put into that, and the fact that, I don't know, you know better than I, it seems from my perspective that until fairly recently, I don't think it was seen much as a funding priority anyway. So to do this and to offer this opportunity for people to get there, if you will, the mental health first aid, that first step towards backing them up is and to make that so accessible is a fabulous service. And I can only commend you, Steve, honestly.
And thank you, thank you, Mark. And, obviously, the co-founder, if you like, or me cohort, me wingman, and Dan is I can't thank him enough and praise him highly enough as well for doing what he's done, for us to set this up. And just going back to what you're saying, I mean, part of why we did it was, when we made a lot of phone calls at the start of COVID to our season ticket holders, and that was a really kind of humbling experience, to speak to so many. We decided as a club to contact all our over 65 season ticket holders, didn't we? Whether you've seen that or heard that. And the players were fantastic getting involved. The manager got involved. There was many staff, and I probably made over 100 phone calls to people. I did feel sorry for them, because some people were getting Sean Pearson, and then some of them had to listen to me prattle on for 20 minutes having a chat about Wrexham. But that was a really nice experience to kind of have a chat to people and see how they were. And I think that's kind of give us a little bit more of a push or me the confidence a little bit as well, to actually get this Dragon Chat really up and running as quickly as what we possibly could.
I think that level of involvement you just described says everything about the community ethos of this club, and pleasingly, in selling the club, we appear to have found people who are willing to take that on board, which is just fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you, Steve, so much for joining us. Just to recap for everyone, so it's male 18 and over, Thursday night Zoom call, details at 7 o'clock, I think I'm right?
7 o'clock, and deliberately done for 90 minutes as well. See, that's where every thought's gone into it.
Well, watch out, because obviously VAR could take you past your bedtime, but
Without doubt. There'll always be some extra time. The way I can talk, Mark, there'll always be extra time.
Brilliant. Well, yes, and the details are always up every Thursday on the club website as well. So,
Yeah.
So Steve, can I just say thank you so much for joining us, but much more importantly, thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure, Mark. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, Dragon Chat. What a fantastic initiative Steve has set up there.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think this day and age, look at the statistics of male suicide, and anything to help men, young men in particular, get through a real crisis is brilliant. And I think it's, with football, going back to the football club thing again, it's great that there's some sort of Wrexham Football Club involvement in that.
Yeah, and that harkens back, I think. Harkens, is that a word? It is now, to what we were saying before about clubs opening doors, if you like, and making a sustained difference, because this isn't like I said, where you wear rainbow laces for a week and forget about that. It is an actual ongoing thing, using the club's good name to spread it around.
It's a big thing for young males to go to football. It's great for their mental health to forget about things for 90 minutes. And with COVID, what's happened is people have not been able to go to football grounds.
Yeah, exactly. To do it via Zoom keeps that connection alive, doesn't it, really? Like streaming, you were saying the other week about streaming creates connections that were in danger of withering away. So
yeah, and again, back on the streaming thing, and another thing we need to talk about when it comes to inclusivity and diversity is, I think it's important that within the future that we drive prices to get into games down, because people may have lost their jobs through COVID or what have you, and they may not be able to afford to go watch Wrexham week in, week out. That might deter their mental health. So I think within the future, prices should go down for football in general.
Absolutely, and then specifically with Wrexham as well, the new owners, you would hope, will be looking at this, and as they grow the club, we will probably be a little less reliant on gate receipts, and therefore, hopefully, those we could have subsidised prices, if you will. Again, the club's supported the food banks in Wrexham enthusiastically. That would be another step forward, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And if they can use football for charitable causes, as maybe you can choose to pay more money to go to the football, and so much of that money goes into food banks or into different local charities. I think that would be a great idea as well. So things like that would be brilliant.
Just thinking as well, other direct ways that, like you said, a football club can use its primary business as a football club for good. I know I think it's the Racecourse Foundation rather than the DLO who organise this. Stand corrected if I'm wrong. The Alzheimer's groups, fans coming in and talking about memories, often of Wrexham, of the team. I mean, isn't that a lovely way to be supporting people directly through football?
Yeah, and I've also looked on the Racecourse Foundation's website. They do things like walking football, which is great for ageing population. It's really important that we continue the really good work that with the autism-friendly aspect of our club, and having that sectioned off area and having a bit more of a quiet zone, because the volume for autistic fans, it can get a little bit too much from at times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even at Wrexham.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. We've not even touched on the disabled viewing platform, the wheelchair viewing platform rather. It's which is a fantastic facility. I always used to get annoyed at the idea that fans in wheelchairs had to have the worst view in the house, and at the racecourse they got the best view in the house. It's something which has been recognised in Parliament.
Really?
Well, I mean, frankly, we use it as a stick to beat Man United with, talking about if Wrexham can offer these facilities, why can't Manchester United offer similar facilities?
Yeah, it's notoriously bad, isn't it? Manchester United's wheelchair area.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, which is shocking for a club of that stature.
But it is genuinely our wheelchair viewing platform is the best view in the house. That right up on the top of the Mud Road stand. It's a brilliant panoramic view of the pitch.
So it should be.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But it's nice because most clubs look at their real estate in terms of their stand and think, how can we make more money out of this area? So football clubs, by definition, they want to stuff executive boxes in because you get much more money, out of that than you do out of a normal seat. But it's nice to see that where we could have that sort of thing, we have the platform.
Yeah, exactly. Don't you think these bigger clubs have enough money?
No. You'd like to think, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But I think Wrexham, you definitely need to carry on the great work they're doing within the community, and I think it's only going to be helped by the likes of Rob and Ryan coming in and ploughing money into it, and I think that's a big priority of theirs as well.
Yeah, these exciting times. I mean, I've got to be frank and say that obviously I like the idea of people coming in and putting money into my club and making it better, but I've never been keen on the idea of private ownership of the club because of the way we've twice nearly gone out of business. I was always really committed to the fans owning the club, and I couldn't really imagine a situation where I would change my mind. And I have changed my mind because, well, the unimaginable has happened.
A miracle.
Yeah. But if there were just two rich people saying we're going to come in and we're going to take the team to the moon, hey, we're going to be brilliant, I wouldn't be so enthused. What excites me is that they are looking to take the whole package. They're attracted by us as a community-facing club, and they want to build on that and improve that. And that's what excites me. If there were just two people coming in to have fun and then leave us a steaming wreck to go out of business, like Rushden and Diamonds or whoever, then I would be concerned. But this commitment to the community makes me feel, that in a way, it's that more than the potential elevation of the football club that excites me about it.
Exactly, and you got to remember this, their reputation on the line.
Yeah.
These guys, these are big stars, and I think they'd love the fact that they could come in and turn a town around to make money. And I think it's going to be great for local businesses and especially great for the community.
Yeah, exactly. And with all the work being done anyway, it's just lovely to see this potential.
And I think that's when the WSC needs credit. They've put the club in a place where it's that marketable that the likes of two Hollywood stars want to buy a club, and that's down to people like Kerry and the DSA who have made this club so investable.
100% correct. It really is. I mean, I'm not going to name any names. I'm aware of a couple, but just any common sense. Just think of other clubs similar to Wrexham in stature, similar crowds maybe, or similar situations. Why pick us? And I've been amused by how there's quite a few podcasts out at the moment actually who are talking about why they pick Wrexham, and they don't actually know. Actually, it surprises me because the answer is terribly obvious, because they looked at our club and thought, well, firstly, debt free. So when we stick our initial 2 million in, half of it doesn't go into covering the debts of a badly run club. It's a genuine 2 million investment. And secondly, they can build on all these positive community initiatives. They're attracted by those special aspects. Otherwise, there's loads of football clubs you could buy in Britain and turn into something better.
Exactly, and wouldn't it be fantastic if some of these fantastic volunteers who've helped the club get a little bit of money or maybe something out of it, where they could actually make it their job rather than just their passion. And I think the Rob and Ryan and the community thing, and that is what really, really made me happy, is that they are willing to invest in us as a town and as a community, and I think that's brilliant.
And the exciting thing as well is that just as they're looking to scale up the club, they're looking, I think, to scale up the possibilities in terms of community work. So people who've worked hard and been limited in their resources may get a chance to express their more ambitious ideas, and that's a very exciting thought to me, I think. So we've been bought by two millionaires, and it could be done for the town. Couldn't happen to a nicer club.
Exactly. As I said, this whole show what we've talked about today, that is not always. It's not always about climbing the ladders of the English leagues.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about improving your town and your community, and that's what football's about for me.
Exactly, brilliant. It's football was born as an expression of the community, and it always remains so. And hopefully, we can now have an opportunity to really turbocharge that.
Yeah.
Brilliant, Jay. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Brilliant.
Always a pleasure to do a show with you. And well, there's only one way to finish this off. As we know, it's the Jay Harris Hollywood Send-Off.
This is Jay Harris, and you're listening to Dragonheart Radio.
Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe as well so you don't miss out on any of our content, and click the bell to get notifications.